I didn't plan for this to happen, but the last 4 Black Gothic horror books that I've read have all introduced me to new subgenres of Gothic literature. These all felt so different from how I thought all Gothic horror literature would be like. Not necessarily in a bad way, it's actually been in a really good way. Because I feel like Black authors are quietly creating their own lane in Gothic literature. And I don't really see a lot of people talking about it like that. Like, this is a big deal, especially with Over the Winter. We had 2 really big Gothic movie adaptations do really well. So you would think that 4 Gothic books by Black authors being all released in the span of 3 months would be a bigger deal. And the fact that these 4 books don't follow traditional Gothic themes, but kind of create their own is really blowing my mind. They follow the traditional Gothic tropes, but the tropes in these books, they feel much more relatable and realistic. It's just everyday things that go on in life. Like, it's still the traditional Gothic tropes and aspects, but they are putting Black culture and communities and history in the forefront. So I just want to come on here and make sure that you're aware of these books. No spoilers. But first, make sure you like and subscribe, and let's get into it. So for instance, this first book, I don't know if there's a specific name for this subgenre yet, but I feel like there should be one. I don't want to say urban, but it does feel like an urban Gothic horror fiction. I don't know how else to describe it, but The Curse of Hester Gardens by Tamika Thompson is definitely redefining the Gothic horror genre. The core themes and tropes of classic Gothic literature are still there, but what makes it feel new is the setting and the cultural lens that the story is being told through. It's about supernatural hauntings going on within a housing development. And another thing that sticks out to me is that it's not just the hauntings of one central character. Most of the tenants in this housing development are experiencing not the same hauntings, but some form of hauntings going on. The setting in the story feels very familiar. It's not the typical structure that we associate with Gothic literature. I talked about this book before when I was doing the analysis of The Street by Ann Petrie, because these 2 books are very emotionally similar, if that makes sense. I like that this book touched on a lot of topics that are very specific to the African American community, like the church, generational trauma, inequalities, and just everyday struggles of being Black in America. I read this book around the same time that I was reading and analyzing Beloved by Toni Morrison. So I was immediately able to point out the Gothic aspects in this book, and Tamika Thompson, she hit them all, but just modernizing them and still delivering a very haunting, heartfelt, emotional horror story. The next one is really newly released, and a new, to me, subgenre. It's stated as a maternal Gothic horror or motherhood Gothic or Gothic motherhood. Never heard of it before, but it perfectly describes Bloodfire Baby by Irene Carson. It's basically about a young woman navigating new motherhood and the ups and downs and creepy Black shadows that comes with it. And what really nailed the Gothic for me in this book was the setting. We mostly associate Gothic settings with dark castles or crumbling homes or dark and gloomy weather, but this was none of that. So I mentioned in the video about The Street by Ann Petrie that the setting doesn't have to be one central structure. And what we find in Bloodfire Baby is that the setting is not really a structure at all. We are going to see this again with another book on this list, but what I like is that along with The Street and The Curse of Hester Gardens and this book as well, is that we are getting a whole new perspective on the Gothic setting, and that makes it feel really relatable. Like, I can definitely picture myself in this book, but up until like a certain point, because then it starts to go really left and I wouldn't make those same decisions. But this was a really good horror story. Humboldt Cult is the one that really did it for me. It was the perfect blend of horror and social commentary and gore. This book quite literally carves out its own lane in Gothic literature, pun intended. So it's about a woman revisiting the small town that she left behind for the big city. And her coming back digs up some old demons from the past, pun intended. On the cover, we see that this is a Redwood Gothic. I've never heard of this before and was very intrigued but skeptical about it. And I just decided to go with that being what it was because I saw that the author had written an essay on her Substack about Redwood Gothic and what it is. So I had planned on reading that after I finished the book to see if I came to the same conclusions. Going into this book, I didn't really catch on to the Gothic aspects unfolding as quickly as I did the other books. Once the story really started rolling, that's when I began to notice what kind of Gothic this was going to be. And again, it's a reoccurring theme that I've been talking about in this video. It all comes down to the setting. And I love that these authors are exploring what can be done with the Gothic setting because it can really enhance the other tropes of Gothic literature like atmosphere and isolation and fear and the supernatural while really pushing the boundaries of what is normally considered a Gothic setting. So yeah, Black people are just Black peopling with these Gothic settings. Alison Mick did a really good job blending Gothic and horror. And it's definitely one that is going to stick with me, pun intended. Then we have a modern Gothic horror story. And I do mean modern. I'm just now realizing what Vincent Torrado was actually doing with this book. And I'm coming to really appreciate what they achieved with it. Like, it really just hit me what they did with this. You know how you realize something after the fact? See you, Vincent. Okay. This one, initially I wasn't too excited to talk about this one because I felt like it didn't really push the boundaries when it came to reshaping the Gothic genre, but it actually really did. So basically this book is about a toxic Dominican family who are trapped in a house. And they have to figure out which one among them is a demon. And I know that sounds vague and it sounds very typical, classic, Gothic horror. And I think that's what they meant to do with this book. Because it does feel like, reading this book feels like one of those black and white horror movies where there's gloomy weather outside, there's the raging thunderstorm, there's this big mansion, which the characters find themselves trapped in because they can't go out in the weather outside. So I really understand what Vincent was trying to do with this book now, calling it a modern Gothic horror, because it has all of the classic Gothic tropes, like 18th century classic Gothic horror tropes, which bringing in those classic tropes and putting them into a more modern setting, that was actually a really fun and unique spin on the Gothic genre. This was really well done because instead of seeing, the normally typically white family, you're seeing this very toxic, very Dominican family doing very Dominican things in a Gothic horror setting. It was really good to see that. So this one was really good. I really appreciate what Vincent did with modern Gothic horror in this book. I love that Black authors are taking Gothic horror and placing it in real experiences, real situations. And I think the common theme across all four of these books was that they really took the Gothic setting and made it their own. And even though they were all doing something with the Gothic setting, they all felt different. They all put their own unique spin on it. Each one had different emotional tones. One was heartfelt, one was a little psycho-paranoia, one was fun and exciting, and one was just like straight horror. I love that each of these set a different tone, and I love that Black people are taking the Gothic genre in a whole new direction than what it used to be. Like, Black people are always going to Black people. We're always going to take something and put our own unique spin on it and make it so much better. I mean, that's just how it is, and that's just how it's going to be. So if you read any Gothic books by Black authors lately, please give me some recommendations because I feel like I've just scratched the surface with these 4 books this year. And I'm really looking forward to reading some more. If you have read any of these and you want a deeper analysis or discussion about them, what I thought about them, Let me know in the comments. If you like this content, please think about subscribing to my channel. And if you want to leave me a comment below, I'll definitely read it. I definitely read all my comments. I know I don't respond as quickly, but I do really appreciate each and every single comment that I get on all of my videos. So thank you. And thanks for watching.